So if you have just joined us, warm welcome to you. We're looking at emailing invoices. It's our advanced session, so part 2. If you haven't had a chance to attend the original session, which we ran about 2 weeks ago, there is a recording available on that. So links will be included on your follow-up email. Now, this is what we're going to be covering in this session today. So we're going to start with a little bit of background, almost a little bit of a recap on what we covered previously as well. And then we're going to run through a series of demonstrations with you today. So we're going to look at taking a layouts only backup. We're going to look at the report properties and saving your layout if it's just a standard one that you're amending. We're going to look at applying email settings to a layout, give you an idea of what options you've got. And we're going to do this from within the report designer aspect of the software today. We'll look at some of the advanced settings you've got, the send immediately option, and the ability to set or change the quick email layout option as well. So that will be the email option that you see on your toolbar within the invoicing module. So we'll show you, just in case you need to change that, where you can do that. And just at the end, we'll explain more about the additional support that's available to you as well. But again, if you're not sure about something during the live session today, keep your questions coming, pop them in there. And as I say, Abby, Jackie or Tina will try and either provide an answer for you or maybe give you a link to one of our Help Center articles, because it's very comprehensive, the information that's available in there. Anyway, we'll get started with the webinar itself then. So a little bit of background just to begin with regard to emailing invoices. And if anyone attended the advanced session for emailing statements last week, the content it's going to be virtually identical. The settings are almost identical as well. It's the same options, but you're just working on a different layout and in a different module as well. So it might just, if you did attend, might just sort of reinforce what you learned last week. Anyway, Sage 50 accounts. It makes it easy to email out your documents, and it should mean that sending out invoices, orders, remittances, and also completing your statement run. If you send out customer statements, it should be a quick and a simple task as well. Now, there are 2 areas where you can amend or apply email settings. Now, 2 weeks ago, we covered the email defaults in the part 1 session, so there's a recording of that one available if you haven't had a chance to watch that one. And if you have downloaded the slides for today's session as well, these links will work as well to take you to the relevant Help Center articles. So in part 1, we looked at applying basic email defaults to a specific layout. Today's session, we're looking at similar options, but we're approaching it from the report design side of the software. So the report designer, which is a really powerful tool that's available within your software. Now, if anyone's using webmail, it should have mentioned that on the reminder email that you got, that we're not really concentrating on webmail or SMTP settings. The vast majority, when we always ask, will be using Outlook. So that's what we're going to concentrate on today. Not that there's much difference. If you need advice on setting up specifically your layout to work with webmail, such as Gmail or Hotmail, for instance, again, if you've downloaded the slides, the link will work for you. It'll take you across to the relevant article and provide the information that you need to be able to set up your webmail against your layouts. Now, one thing I must stress, and I'm going to demonstrate this as well in just a moment, is that before you amend any settings of a layout or any of your reports, take a backup. Yes, you can do a file save as you're going through the various layouts, but if you make a complete mess of it and let's say you save your changes, the easiest way to undo what you've then done is just to restore. If you pop in the wrong email settings and you think it's just not working anymore, it's not working maybe how you had it, and you just went in to tweak it, maybe you've amended the settings and it just doesn't work how you need it to, then again, you could restore prior to making that change. So take a layouts only backup. I can't stress that one enough. And we'll include that in the demonstration, which we're going to run through now. So the demonstrations we're going to run through, taking a layouts only backup, changing the report properties of your invoice template and saving it. We're then going to run through the email settings themselves, so how you can apply those to the layout and give you an idea of what options are available. We're looking at the advanced settings as well, so using expressions in some of the fields. We'll pick up on the send immediately option, which can be a big time saver, just make that process extra slick. And then finally, we'll just pick up on that option to change the email layout that you've got assigned to the quick email option within the invoicing area. Right, I'll share my screen at this point and we'll get stuck into some demos. Now, to take a layouts only backup, which is where we're going to start, nice and simple. We're just going to go to File, choose the backup option, just click yes to close the other windows. And what we're looking for on here is layout templates. That's the only one we want ticked. Data files you'll probably have ticked by default, but what we want to do just at this stage is layout templates only. Now I'm just going to pop mine on my desktop and I'll call it Michael's Layouts. So giving it a file name, you might call it Sage Layouts or whatever you want to call it. Give it a file name, choose your location. So just, as I say, popping mine on my desktop, but you could browse and choose wherever you want to save it to. But the key is I'm backing up my layouts only at this stage. I click OK, and I'm going to get a warning. It just says you've not included any data files as part of this backup. Do you want to continue? Now in this instance, I do. I want to back up those layouts only, just to cover my back, just in case I make any changes and it doesn't quite go according to plan. It tells me the backup has been successful, so I OK that. Now, if you were to go and take another backup, so let's say it's the end of the day and you think, well, let's just go to backup, and I come in here and you click OK, that's when you want that warning to pop up, and that's why, because it does hold your settings. So make sure you revert back to backing up your data files. So nice and easy to take your layouts only backup. Next, we're going to go into invoices and credits. What I'll do is I'll highlight a couple of invoices on my list there, and we're just going to pop into print. And I've got a couple of my layouts flagged as favorites, and the one I'm going to use today is this one, this A4 invoice stroke credit unit price without discount. Now, if you've not come across the favorites option so far, all you would do is you would go into layouts, find your layout on the list, click on the star, and what it will do when you first come into that print option, it will list it in the favorites folder. That's all you're doing. You're flagging it to appear in there. If you've got one there and you want to get rid of it, click on the star, it'll remove it. But it means that you're not having to then go into layouts, you're scrolling up and down the list trying to find it. It's listed by default. But this is the one we're going to look at to begin with. So we had two invoices selected on the invoice list. We're going to select this layout. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to output to email. Now, in this particular example, this specific layout, it's got no email settings attached to it. So there's nothing applied. We're going to start essentially from scratch with this layout. So you might well be getting this when you first choose your layout and you're trying to email it out. Now it tells me at this stage, no email settings were detected. Would you like to apply email settings? So would you like to apply it? I'm just going to choose no at this stage. If I was to choose yes, it would take me back into the email defaults that we covered in the part 1 webinar. So I'm then prompted, the email settings for this report are not fully configured. Do you want to send the entire report as an attachment? So if I click yes at this stage, I just OK that. It tells me it's successfully output to email. I just OK that. And if I go into my Outlook, let's just get rid of a few of these messages I've got popping up. So going back to, I'll just cancel all that. So what I've got is it's basically created an attachment. So it's a PDF in this case. And what it'll have done is it will have, if I preview that one, it'll have created, in this case, it's a 2-page report. So it's got the 2 invoices on essentially one PDF document. So it's combined the 2. And all I would do is I would fill in the information. But obviously that's not a slick process. You don't want to have to be typing in a customer's email address each and every time. It's all right for some purposes. You might want to send a full list to one of your colleagues, for instance. So it would work in that scenario. But what we want is it to generate an invoice automatically for us and pull through things like the customer's email address. So that's what we're looking at in today's session. Let's close out of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go, first of all, highlight our layout. We're going to go into edit at the top, which basically is going to open the design of that invoice layout in the report designer. Now, if you've never touched report designer before, there's some great recordings available from our webinar library. Remember, the links to the recordings are included on your follow-up email. Now, this is a standard layout that I'm amending. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all go into report and report properties, and I'm going to change this. And I'm just going to call it Michael's invoice layout. What I'll also do is I'll change that report description as well. Okay, that. So that just to confirm, it was report properties. I amended these two fields, clicked OK. And what I'm finally going to do is I'm just going to go to File and Save As. Give it a file name. Let's call it Michael's invoice. Don't need to change the path there. It will default to the right folder. Save it. And that's it done. Now, if I just quickly close out of that layout for the time being, it's not listed in my favorites yet, but if I go into the layouts folder and I scroll down, I should be able to find it on the list. So there it is there. So essentially it's just a copy of what was originally there. You'll find that you can't do a save if you make any changes to a default layout. You've got to do a save as. So I'll flag that one as a favorite, just again, so I can easily find it. And this is the one we're going to make amends to during the session today. So if we highlight this one, go into edit, again, it'll open up the design of that back in the report designer. The email settings you'll find by going into report and then email settings. And you'll see it's completely blank at the moment. Now, if in part one, when you watched how to use the email defaults, if you'd applied any settings to a specific layout, it would pull it through into this area. But you can see it's virtually completely blank. There's no settings at the top, so we know that hasn't been applied. Now, the top option here, we'll come back to that one in a moment, where it says email message should contain. We'll come back to that one. I'll just quickly run through some of the other options first. So the to box, who do we want to send that invoice to? So we click on the button, and what we can do is we can either type in an address. Now that's great if, say, we had a specific layout and we always wanted to send it to the same address, but we don't. We want it to pick up the email address from the customer's account. So we need to pop some form of expression in this bottom box, and this is really simple, this one. We just click add, takes us into the expression editor, and in the lower box of the two on the right, just want to collapse that one and scroll down to essentially the table called sales ledger. What I'm going to do is just click on the plus sign, and within the sales ledger, so sales ledger referring to essentially your customer records, what we're saying is what we want the to address to be picked up from is from the email address field. So you just need to scroll down. Now you'll see I've got email 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now you'll only have 4, 5, and 6 if you run version 29. So if you haven't installed that yet, maybe you haven't been notified that it's ready for you to download yet, that's fine. You'll still have email and email 2 and 3. So these refer to the fields, the email fields within the customer record. So I'm just going to choose that one, the first one. So the email address field 1 within the customer record, that's where I want it to pick up the email address from. So if I double click it, it'll pop it in there. So sales ledger email, and I can just OK that. You'll see it's popped it in there. Now, if I did want it to go to more than one email address that's set within the customer record, I can just go into add Again, repeat the same process. So into Sales Ledger, we'll just scroll down to the email fields again. And I could select email to and OK that. So it's now going to pick up any email address from email address field 1 and 2, and it'll pop that in the to box on the email. So if you want it to go to more than one of your customers' email addresses, that's how you do that. So we'll just OK that. Now you've got similar options for CC. So if you want to carbon copy someone into it, it looks and works in pretty much exactly the same way. And also for the BCC, so a blind carbon copy, that's obviously an email address. You may not be familiar with that option, but it means that if you pop one in there, the customer or the recipient of that email, they won't see that one. So you might, for instance, you might go into that one and just type in your company's mailbox, for instance, wherever you want to store it. So you would just enter that as maybe a bit of text and just add that in. But otherwise, it could work in exactly the same way. From is only used if you're using webmail and you've used SMTP settings. So we're just going to skip past that. Again, if you need more information about using webmail, such as Gmail, Hotmail, etc., then do check out the information that's available. We'll come on to the subject line next. Now the subject line, essentially you've got a text box at this point. What I'm going to do just at this point is I'll just type in the word invoice. Now you could just enter a bit of text, put your company name in, invoice from, whatever your company name is, that type of thing. Or you might want it to pull other information through. And we're going to come back to that one a little bit later on. So again, I could click on that subject line and I could start building an expression. We'll come back to the expressions a little bit later on for things like the subject line, the file name, etc. But for now, we just got that bit of text in there. So that's the top section complete. Next, we've got how should the report be sent? So do you want to send the report as plain text? So the body of the actual invoice itself in the main body of the email. Do we want to, and if we select that, you'll see that the other options are then grayed out. The more common option is to leave the second option selected. So sending the invoice as an attachment on the invoice. And you'll probably send it as a PDF. There are different formats available, but I think you probably expect it to be PDF, which is why it defaults to that. You can also see that you've got information in the main body of the invoice as well, so the email that gets generated. If you want to change that, that's where you do it. You've got a file name. Now by default, it just picks up report description. So that's going to pick up the report description that I amended a little bit earlier, and we'll possibly come back to that one in the advanced section section as well. We'll just OK that for the time being. Now you've got a couple of options here: request a read receipt for this message, request a delivery receipt. So really, I think they're more for your webmail these days. You can tick those if you want to. Sending options. Now, if you're new to emailing out invoices or statements or any other document for that matter, what I would encourage you to do is to use this option: save emails to your mailbox. It means that when you output your emails, it will generate an email, save it in the draft folder, in your drafts folder if you're using Outlook, and it means that you can see that email before you then send it. You can make any changes. As your confidence grows with that option, you'll probably come in and flag it to send them immediately. So we'll come back to that one a little bit later on, that send immediately. And what I'm going to do, just in the mail provider at the bottom, I'm just going to choose Microsoft Outlook. So we're going to OK this for the time being. I'll save the changes, close out of the report designer. And what we'll do is, with my layout selected, I'm going to output to email. It tells me it's successfully output to email, so don't get that warning this time. It tells me it's been successfully output to email. So okay that, and if I flick back to my email, I'll find the right button. There we go. What we've got is in our drafts folder, I've just got the one at this stage. So what it's done is it's picked up from the very last of the accounts. It's picked up that one email address. So this is something to watch out for. So it hasn't generated individual emails just at this point. It's generated one, it's pulled through one of the customers that we did have selected, and it's attached all of the invoices as one PDF. So this is something that can catch you out. So in that scenario, what you need to do, you go back to your, essentially your Sage, select your layout, go into Edit, and we're going to go back into Report, the Report menu, Email Settings, and it's this option at the top. This is the important one. This is the one that we need to change. So from the drop down, we've got loads of options. Now, basically, the rule of thumb is you'll choose the highest group number. So in this case, it's group number 8. That's all we need to do. You don't need to be concerned about how many groups you've got. It's the highest group number. So select that from the drop down. That's the only change I'm going to make just at this stage. So we'll OK that one. File, save the changes, close out, and we'll pop back to Outlook just for a moment. And what I'll do is I'll just delete the draft that's there for the time being. So we've got an empty drafts folder. Back into Sage. I'll highlight my invoice layout. And we'll output to email again. It tells me the report has been successfully output to email, and I OK that, and this time I've got 2. So I've got an individual email for one of my customers and a separate email for my other customer. Now, if I go into the first one, the sage1@yotmail.com, you can see it's pulled through both email addresses. It's got my invoice attached. Again, it's just pulling through the report description at the moment, but we'll show you how you can change that in a moment as well. And if we just open that one, and what it's got for A1 design, it's only got their invoices attached. So I've got that, but just essentially that one email. It doesn't have all of the invoices that I'd selected. Essentially, it's split them, and it has generated an email for each one. So it means that if you want to send out your invoices in bulk, maybe you send them out at the end of the week rather than there and then when you generate them, you can easily do that. You don't have to generate one, send it, then go on to the next one, output to email and send that one. So Ron, you're just asking there, when you run your invoices, can we generate a subject line that includes your company name, etc.? Absolutely, we are going to cover that one. And that's essentially what we're coming on to next, some of the advanced settings. But the key there is, what it's done is, it's generated separate emails for each customer, and it's only obviously attaching their specific email. So we'll just clear that drafts folder again. And again, we'll go back to Sage. So that's the basics of configuring your layout. But as Ron has just asked for there, what if we want the subject line or maybe the file name to contain maybe things like your company name or the invoice number, for instance? So how do you go about doing that? This is where you need to use the expression editor. So we're going to go back into our layout. We'll click Edit. Again, it takes us back into the Report Designer, into Report, and then back into Email Settings. Now, as it stands, we've got the subject line, which just says Invoice. Fine, that might be okay for you. You might not want anything else. You might just want something as simple as that. You might want to put your company name in. But what, as in Ron's asking, can we include our company name and maybe the invoice number? So yes, you can is the answer to that one. And how we go about doing that is by going into the subject. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clear this box, so it's empty at the moment. Now, rather than just build it up, and you can, there's a whole host of options you can use for this, but there's a great resource in our Help Center, which is this one, Common Email Subject Expressions. And what I'll do is I'll get either Abby, Jackie, or Tina to pop this link into the chat panel for you. So there'll be a chat option on your toolbar down the right as well. We'll send you a link to the relevant Help Center article. But this has some common expressions on. So what we can say is, I want it to say maybe my company name with some extra customized wording. Do I want it to say something like the word invoice, have the invoice number, and then say from, and then have your company name in there? Do I want it to say similar? So there's various options for this one. And what I'm going to do is I want it to, a bit like this one, I want it to say invoice, the actual invoice number, and I want it to include my company name. So what I do is I copy this expression, so this one here, and I'll just highlight it, right click it, copy it. I'll go back to Sage, back to the report designer, I should say. In the expression editor, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste that in. Now you could build this manually yourself using bits of text and adding different variables in, etc. But much easier just to see the example and copy that and paste it in. But there's a whole host of options that you want. You might want your company name first. So it's up to you. Just decide on what you want, and then if you can't quite get it, just get in touch with our support team and then point you in the right direction. So I'll just leave it at that for the time being and okay that. So you can see it's pulled that information through at the top there. What I'll also do, you've got a similar option for the file name. Now I might just want it to pull through the invoice number, but actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste the same thing in. So again, it's going to say the word, it's going to say it's an invoice. It's then going to say the invoice number. It'll say, have the word from, and then it's going to pull through my company name. So I'll just okay that as well. And we'll okay that at the bottom. Save our changes. Close out. And again, just with these two selected at the bottom, what I'll do is I'll go back to print, choose that layout that we just amended, output to email. So we'll use the option on the top toolbar this time. It's the same as going on using this floating toolbar, but we'll just use the one at the top. It tells me it's been successfully output to email. And if we switch back to Outlook at this point, we'll now see that we've got, obviously it's split it again. So it's got essentially the two invoices that are selected. It's split that, so separate emails. And in the subject line, it's now saying invoice number 88 from, and it's got my company name, Email Demos Limited. So Ron, that's how you would do that. So again, if you have a look in the chat box, Tina's pasted that link in for you. So if you want examples of those expressions for the subject line or the file name, that's how you would get it. Margaret, you're asking there, does the or in the expression mean it will only pick up either invoice or credit note, but not both? So yeah, it's essentially, it's going to look at the document type. So if, for instance, I generate a credit note based on that expression that we popped in, it would have said credit, whatever the number was, from Email Demo Limited, which is, in my case, that's my company name. Right, let's just delete those. So I hope that makes sense. That's, I suppose, where the advanced settings come in. So loads of options, and again, there's loads of information about what you can and essentially what you can do within the email settings within that area. Right, let's go back to Sage. Final thing I wanted to mention with regard to report design side, if we highlight our layout and go back to edit, is the send immediately option. So far, what we've had is we've had it generate the emails and it's saving it as a draft. Now that's what I would encourage you to do if you're just new to sending out emails. But again, as you gain confidence, you're going to want to make that process as slick as possible. So when you're outputting an email, you just want it to say, right, that's done, and off it goes. So if we go back to report, into email settings, and all we're going to do is at the bottom, we're just going to flick that option to send emails immediately. So I'll OK that one, save the changes, close out. And again, what I'll do is I'll just output to email. Now it tells me the report is successfully output to email, so I just OK that. You'll see there is nothing in the drafts folder. And at the moment, I've got 2 set in my outbox. So once it's sent, which will do it automatically, it will then just transfer it across, obviously, to my sent items. But I don't need to do anything at that point. As you can see it sort of counting down there. It's a bit slow on mine today. So there we go. So in the sent items, I can see the 2 that I've just generated, and that's it done. So nice and easy. Right, now once you've got your changes made as well, let's say it's working how you want it to. And if you are wanting to experiment with this option a little bit, so you want to, maybe you're new to it, you're thinking, well, I don't want to keep sort of outputting to the drafts folder. Why not create yourself a dummy customer, put your own email address in, put a dummy invoice on for the time being, and just start outputting, just so you can have a go of that. When you're ready and it's working how you expect it to, then delete the invoice from the invoice list. Delete your customer, because you wouldn't have updated the invoice to the ledgers at that point, so you would just be able to delete that customer because there'll be no activity. So it means you can have a go of that and get it working the way you want. Once it is working the way you want, back up your layouts. What you don't want to do is someone to come along and say, oh, or even yourself, oh, right, I'll just have a quick tidy up, and you highlight your layout and you click delete at the top. It's gone. You're then back to square one. But if you've got that layouts only backup, it means you can restore that and you're up and running again. You're back to where you were. So just like backing up your data means you can get back to certain points in time. So when you're done, take a layouts only backup. Right, final thing I want to quickly mention to you is within invoicing, and it's this option here. Now, if you've not used this option before, email and quick print are very similar. So the idea is you would highlight it on the list and you would click your option and it would pick up your default settings. So it would pick up your default printer, accept the default settings, and off it goes. So the idea is it's one click rather than you highlighting it, going into print, finding your layout and choosing your print or email option at the top and then having to click any other options. The idea with these is you just highlight it on the list and then you click quick print or quick email. Now, the first time you select these 2 options, it will prompt you to choose a layout. Now, I think I've already got mine set up, so it will just do it automatically. So it tells me it's been output to email. Let's get rid of that browser, and that would be it. That would be it done. So nice and simple. Now, if you haven't used this option before, when you first select it, it will ask you, right, which is the layout that you want to assign to this option. So it will just give you a list of layouts, just similar to going into this list here. It would give you that list, and it would just be a case of you scrolling down the list trying to find the one you're after. Now, if you have used it before and you think, well, actually, I want to switch that to a different layout now because I've amended my email settings, what you will do is go into settings at the top, and then you will have an option called invoice and order defaults. So if you're on the essentials level of the software, it'll just be called invoice defaults. So click on it, and it will take you into this window. And what you're looking for is either the quick print or, in this case, the email option. So choose email and against invoices, just a case of you then clicking browse. And this is the layout that would have popped up if I'd not used this option so far. So it's just a case of you browsing through your list, trying to find the one that you want to use. So this is mine. So I select it, click OK, OK that, and that's it done. So that's where you would change either the layout attached to that email option or the quick print option. And just to confirm, if we, let's say, highlight those two, we'll choose email, just OK that, and that's it done. So if we go back to Outlook, and again, remember, it's not saving it to the drafts folder now. It is basically sending it immediately. So there's the two listed again. So just in case you were wondering, is it live today? As you can see, it's at 22nd of Feb, and that was 2:39. So they're the two that have just been generated on the back of literally what I've just clicked. I hope that makes sense. So hopefully you're feeling a lot more positive with regard to email. For some people can find it a real struggle to get email settings set up. Particularly if you're working on webmail, and webmail does differ quite a bit here and there. Depends who you're with. So if, you know, one way you set up with Gmail, it might be different to the way that you set up with Hotmail. So it's difficult for me to include the setting up of webmail to make it worthwhile. The vast majority will be using Outlook, but if you're using webmail, do check out the steps. It's all included in our help center. Right, let's pop back to the slides for a moment. If I can find the right option. Right, let's try that one again. So just to confirm, obviously, as you've seen, it's really easy to email your documents and really quick as well. And once it's set up, it's not something that you should have to continually change, not unless anything specifically changes. You change provider, or you want to change the file name or the subject line or the way it sends it, or you want to incorporate extra email addresses into when you are sending it. So it should be nice and easy. And it's something that potentially you just do once and it just works from that point. But make sure you take that layouts only backup before you start making any changes. And also, once you're up and running, take another one. Don't overwrite the original, just take a separate one, give it a different file name. Remember to change the report properties if you want to change the description or the name of your specific layout. That was just report properties within the report designer. We've looked at the various settings. They are all documented within the Help Center as well. And for the advanced settings, you've got that document that we've shared the link to in the chat option, which is available via your toolbar. So if you want those commonly used expressions for both the subject lines on the email and the file name, you can use them in both areas. You can use the same thing as I've demonstrated today, or you can make your own. So again, do use that. Send immediately. Obviously, once you're confident, I would encourage you to switch that on. It just makes that process as slick as possible. And again, the quick email option, making that just that little bit easier as well. So hopefully you're feeling a lot more confident. Give it a go if you aren't already. Now, so we've got loads of webinars planned in for the rest of this month and also March. March is now available to book on to. If you've not come along to one of our version 29 webinars yet, which we're in the process of rolling out at the moment, if you want to see those features, please get yourself signed up. We're also going to be covering things like year-end, backing up. So again, we've covered layout-only backups today. If you want a better understanding of backing up and the schedule backup option, that type of thing, come along to backing up, which we've got running next, I think that's next Tuesday. And we've also got a company archive option running as well. So on the back of all of the questions that we've been getting on the year-end sessions, just to help you understand more about company archives, we'll be running a short session on that as well. But loads of sessions to get yourself booked onto. If you've missed any of the emailing sessions that we've been running over the last few weeks, then recordings are available. The recording of today's session, as normal, will be made available later on today. So you can always have a bit of a recap if needed. Right, now that brings us to the end of today's demo. So let me thank you for coming along. I hope you've enjoyed it and you found it useful. And if nothing else, for some, you may have just come along and thought, well, actually, I've learned nothing new, but maybe it's just giving you a little bit of reassurance that what you knew is correct. Others, you may have picked up a few tips. Others, you might be thinking, well, I haven't done it yet, but I'm feeling a bit more confident to give it a go. It can be a great time saver emailing documents. And remember, our support team is on hand if you need a little bit of assistance. There will be a short exit survey pop up as you leave today's session. If you've got any thoughts, ideas, any feedback you want to share with us on the webinars, or what you'd like to see covered going forward, how we can improve the webinar, that type of thing, then that's your opportunity. If you can take a minute to pop some comments on there, it'd be greatly appreciated. We love reading your comments to see if we hit the mark or not. And your follow-up email, which has got the link so you can register for future webinars and watch the recordings, that will be with you later today. So watch out for that one. I think I've got that scheduled for around about 2 hours time. So you'll be getting that around about 4 o'clock, which gives us a chance to get the recording of today's session hosted. So watch out for that one. But if you're about to leave, many thanks. Take care, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you on some future sessions. If you think of any questions after you leave, you know where we are. Do get in touch. However, there is loads of great information to help you get set up within our help center, so do check that out. If you've got any questions, we seem to just almost up to date with the questions. So if you've got any, if you want to pop them in. And we'll try and pick up as many as we can. Jennifer, you mentioned you got a specific issue with one of your invoices when you email it out. I think for that specific query, I would recommend get in touch with our support team. They can have a quick look at that with you. I think that's the best option. Much easier than me trying to have a stab in the dark as to what's wrong with that one. So get in touch with our support team and they can have a look at that one with you. That's the best option for that type of query. Chetin, your question there, is it possible to add details of when an invoice was sent? So add it into a line into the communications for a customer record. I don't think it does that by default. Let me just, I think it will do it for letters and it will do it for statements, but I don't think it does it for invoices by default. You would instead need to record that manually. So it'd just be a case of going into your customers, into the communications record. Let me just make sure I'm sharing the right screen there. I don't think I am. So into the customer record, into communications, and then you've got your options to add an entry. So if you add an entry, you can say, right, it was an email I've sent, and pop in like the fact that you've emailed an invoice. But it doesn't update that by default, I don't think. I think that's what you're getting at. Maria, you mentioned you learned a lot today. Oh, excellent. Pleased about that one. If you've got any other feedback, in fact, if anyone else has any other feedback as well, then let us know. Pop it on the survey. That'll pop up as you leave the session. Again, if you think of any other questions after you leave the session today, you know where we are. As I say, have a good look through the Help Center information as well. And the follow-up email, it will be with you in around about 2 hours time. Right, okay, once again, many thanks for your time. I think we're just about done with the questions. So we'll end the webinar just at that point. But once again, many thanks for coming along. I hope you've enjoyed it and found it useful. And we hope to see you on some other sessions soon. Many thanks.